And are we live?
We are live now.
Oh,
Hi, everybody.
exciting.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on study skills. This is a webinar brought to you by UnionLearn. I'm Anna from the DEC and I'll be joined today by three fantastic presenters. Sal Campbell from Birkbeck University, Jo Kane from the WEA and Matt Poynton, a colleague at the UnionLearn. So just before we get going, just to remind you all about our webinar platform. On the right-hand side, we have a chat panel that it's great to see so many of you already introducing yourselves, telling us where you're from, and maybe your experiences of study skills, which is fantastic. Underneath the screen, you'll see there's an Ask a Question button. Please post any questions you've got for Sal, Matt or Jo there, and we will get to as many as we can throughout the presentation. My colleagues from UnionLearn are busy in the chat posting links to resources and important websites throughout, so please keep an eye on that. But if you miss anything, either a resource or something in the presentation, don't worry, because we'll be sending a link to the recording out later today, so you've got everything there as a reference when you need it. So first up, why are we talking about study skills? I'm going to ask my colleague Matt to kick us off. Matt, can you introduce yourself and explain why we need to be thinking about study skills at this time, and what do we mean by that term?
Okay, yeah, good afternoon. So, as Anna said, my name's Matt. I'm one of the project officers with UnionLearn, and some of you may recognise me because I was on one of these webinars a couple of weeks ago, which, if you did miss it, I think is on the YouTube channel. I think study skills are really important, and particularly at the moment with the lockdown, because people are starting to change how they're working and they're starting to change some of their priorities because we can't do some of the stuff that we normally do. And studying is one of the things that people are thinking about. Oh yeah, maybe I'll have a go at that. Maybe you have a little bit more time than you used to. But how do you go about it? What do you do? Now, my experience is in education, and for many years I've worked with unions, but I also worked in prisons as a teacher for many years. And what's very apparent is that for a lot of people, there are these great barriers to overcome before you can study successfully. So perhaps you struggled a little bit at school and you think like, oh, do I really want to go back to that? But what I would say is that most of those barriers are actually, they're in your head. They're not real physical barriers. They're not barriers that cannot be overcome. They're there. And if you're the one who can control your own head and you can sort that out and you can do it. So that's the good news. And next to Jo.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joanna Kane. I work for the WBA, the Workers' Educational Association, and I previously worked in union learning for a long time at Unison. So the WBA is a community-based membership organisation. We're committed to achieving social purpose, social justice through education, and to delivering adult education, which achieves a broad set of outcomes for students. So it's about becoming active citizens, building vibrant communities, either in work or in communities or indeed online. And many of our students face, significant disadvantages, either as low-paid or precarious workers, as migrants, or as often older people who are facing particular challenges right now around social isolation. So in the WEA, our challenge has been to encourage and support our students and actually our tutors as well to try out learning online for the first time. So it's been a massive learning curve for all of us and for the organisation, but fantastic in a strange way, a really fantastic opportunity and an experience. So from my perspective and from the WEA perspective, study skills is really, in this context, about building confidence to try out digital learning for the first time. And the good news is the 202 now people who are on this webinar That's what you're doing. You're trying out digital learning. So that's a massive first step. So that's brilliant. And we want to encourage everyone to see that learning online, it also can be interactive and engaging, and as interactive and engaging as being in a classroom. And secondly, really importantly, to show that it's easier than you think. So I'll say a bit more about that. Thank you.
And that's fantastic, Jo. Really interesting to hear about the work of the WBA. So now over to Sal to tell us about the work of Birkbeck.
Okay, so my name is Sal Campbell, and I'm a learning development tutor at Birkbeck College in London. So we specialise in providing education, university education for working Londoners. So people who basically may not have gone to university the first time, or like at some later point in their life think, you know what, I want to try something different. So we've got masses of learners who are mature students. We've got masses of learners who are coming back to university after a really long time or studying something completely different from the first time. So I myself, for example, I was a Birkbeck student before I worked for Birkbeck. My first degree, which I finished in 1998, was in fine art sculpture. Didn't do me a lot of good in terms of my career and didn't help me at all with my second degree in cultural studies and post-colonial studies when I was 36. So it was, I really know what that experience is coming back to uni. So the thing about study skills is, I think I want to emphasize about study skills is they're skills. And the thing about skills is our skills are things that you can learn. So there's no such thing as an academic type, or there's no such thing as having innate intelligence in this way or not. You either were taught how to do this or you weren't. Now, universities have cottoned on to the idea that if they teach students how to achieve something and how to do it, then the students are going to be able to do it better. And that everybody wins, everybody wants that. So really, like, study skills are things like instructions, strategies, techniques to make your studies easier and more rewarding. So it's just how to do it. So the way I see it is study skills is how to do something, and the content of your degree, whether it be history or law or social studies, is what you're studying. So once you've got the ingredients and the instructions, you can do anything. Yeah, that's what I think.
Thanks, Sal. And I think that's a great way to put it. It's a list of ingredients that you then cook, I think, to get the correct outcome. So thanks for that introduction, everybody. To start us off, based on your own learning experiences, are there any initial tips that you'd like to give to new learners, particularly those who are thinking about studying online for the very first time during this lockdown? So we'll start off with you, Sal.
Okay, right. So as I said, like, my primary experience of studying as an adult was going back to university in my 30s because I wanted to make a career change so I was an English language teacher in further education for a really long time, and I wanted to make the step over into learning more about education from an academic point of view and then move into universities, but I didn't know how to do it. Like, it was a disaster. At first, it was a disaster because I didn't know what I was doing, and all I had was some sculpture experience. So really, it was realizing that the skills I'd been developing and growing throughout my life in other areas were applicable to study. So it's not that you're going to be learning something completely new. You're going to be adapting and building on the strengths that you've already been developing all of your life so far. So, you can think of this idea of adaptation, things like, reading the syllabus of your course before you start going on is a bit like scanning the contents page of a book. You know what's going to happen, so you're more prepared for it. Or things like, I would ask everybody in this workshop so far, have you Googled anything this week? It's likely that you have. You've just done research when you're comparing products, you're evaluating and judging. These are skills that you already have. So one thing about my experience was in the first term of my course, as somebody who considered myself really well read and quite kind of academic in terms of my non-fiction reading tastes, I never used my dictionary as much as I did in my whole life and in the first term of that course. And I thought, because initially I thought, I don't understand what this reading's about. I don't know what they're saying. And then I finally realized what I wasn't understanding was the vocabulary, the disciplinary vocabulary about the subject. So it was really, really very humbling. to have to use the dictionary all the time, but it helped me, not just because it wasn't the words that I didn't understand, it was the concepts. So you're coming to university to learn something new. Of course, you're not going to know about the ideas in that subject. That's why you're studying, right? So once I got over feeling like I should already know this, I was able to learn more about the subject, and it worked. So I could adapt the way I might Google something I don't know in normal life to my studies. So yeah, really, it's just about, what are the instructions? Once you know what the recipe is for an essay, you know what the recipe is for a report, you know what reflective writing is meant to look like, you're able to do it. So much in the same way as if someone told you to bake a cake and no one had ever given you a recipe before, it would go quite badly wrong. Of course it will. But if you have a recipe, if you've got instructions, you're able to try it out. But also, let's not forget that the first time you do anything new is often a little bit of a disaster. Like the first time you make a cake, the good cake is the second cake, right? Because you work out there's too much sugar here, it was in the oven for not quite long enough, there wasn't enough liquid, it was a little bit dry, and the second time you're better at it. So allow yourself to basically cut yourself some slack. It's not going to be perfect the first time, so allow yourself to go through that trial and error learning process to really build your skills and have a little fun doing it. Like, it's an experiment. And the final thing is, so I really struggled on my master's sometimes, but I absolutely loved it. It was really hard work, but it was so rewarding. So let's not forget that the root of the word school, in the Greek, means leisure. So it's something I'm doing for a kind of pleasure in my life. So it might be a bit of a workout, but it's also incredibly rewarding. So something doesn't need to be easy to be something that is worth doing as well. Okay, who am I passing on to?
You're passing on to Jo next, but that was fantastic, Sal. Really great inspiration there. Thank you. Over to you, Jo.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. So key points for me about studying and actually interacting online as well. The first time I was involved in a webinar, and I'll say a bit more about Zoom in a minute, because in the WBA we've done a lot of work on Zoom. But I just remember it being really quite intimidating. And I remember the first interaction I was involved in, I completely froze. My words got all jumbled up. Things I could do fine in a face-to-face setting on screen, it just felt very different. And I think it's as you've just said, Sal, it's normal to feel like that, and it's just a step you need to go over. So my key kind of tip really is give it a try. There is an enormous amount of free provision online right now that you can just click on and try, and it is a great opportunity. The hardest bit is almost the first step, and you've already taken this step. Some of you will be webinar and learn online aficionados, but for others of you this will be new. First step, click on that link, have a look around, see what you think. And I think that's crucial. It also doesn't have to be something that you do on your own. And I think it's really important to emphasize that a lot of the learning online that's available at the moment is not what you might have experienced at work as a sort of set of questions that you work through with a test on the end with sort of compulsory health and safety training and all of that. It doesn't look like that. It is actually about being interactive. And actually, this is an opportunity to create new communities, especially if you join a class which perhaps is meeting once a week for several weeks. So really and truly, learning online can be about tackling isolation, not about reinforcing it and doing something on your own. So we've been using Zoom actually for quite a few years now for our courses, and it's really easy to use. You can log on through a smartphone or a computer or a laptop, and you can even dial in if you don't have a computer. So in terms of access, it's easy to access. There are lots of security measures that we've implemented, because there has been anxieties about that. So there's lots of security and passwords and so on, so you're protected when you're using that or many other sort of environments. So many education providers are also using what are called virtual learning environments, and we've got about 2,000 students using ours at the moment who've never used it before. And it's a way of keeping in touch between sessions, sharing resources, having chat rooms and talking to one another. Now, a virtual learning environment sounds like an intimidating thing, but actually, if you use Facebook, it's really no different to that. It's a means of chatting, keeping in touch, and it is about building new communities. So just to summarize, give it a whirl. It doesn't have to be complicated. Many sessions are very short. And if you don't like, if you're not enjoying it, then that's fine. You can opt out as well. So it's actually, in a way, should be less intimidating sometimes than crossing the threshold to go into a college or whatever for the first time. So good luck.
Thanks, Jo. Before we hand over to Matt to talk about his tips for getting started with studying online, it's just worth saying that there are some links being posted in the chat with some study skills and library resources from Birkbeck. Somebody else has recommended that a good way to get going with online learning is bite-sized courses. And I think that's a really great suggestion. A bite-sized course can be anything from like a 15-minute introduction to a subject to something that maybe lasts a couple of hours. Please don't think you have to commit to a course that's weeks or months in length. There's always something out there as a starter. So over to you, Matt, to talk about your tips for getting started.
I started doing online learning a few years ago, and it was actually through my union that I got involved in it. And before then, and at the beginning, I was rather skeptical about it, I have to say, because I was a teacher for a long time, so I was used to face-to-face learning. But I find it's been really good, and it's great, particularly with what you were just saying with the bite-sized stuff, because rather than a huge course that's going to take up all your time and you do it for 2 or 3 years, there may be a subject that you think like, I wonder about that. I wouldn't mind learning a little bit about it, but I don't want to go into too much depth. And I find on some sites like FutureLearn, OpenLearn, Coursera, you can do that, and that's great. I believe the WBA also has some bite-sized learning on there, as well as some lectures. So it maybe you just want to take a more passive approach first time and listen to a lecture, and that's fine. And I have to say, for me, even prior to the lockdown, I found that online learning really enriched my life. But I think there are some do's and don'ts about it. And the one that I think it's the big difference perhaps with classroom study is it's self-directed. You haven't got a teacher telling you what to do. You haven't got a teacher giving you the syllabus, as it were, with a lot of them. You're in control of your learning, which is nice. That's empowering, but it comes with risks. So what I would say is set yourself a schedule, set yourself a daily goal. Some of the websites help to do that. So, for example, people who like language learning, there's Duolingo, and they actually help you set goals per day and then give you a little reminder if you haven't done your learning. Because the big no-no, I would say, with any learning, but particularly online learning, is don't binge learn. Just like, binge watching TV series might be good, but binge learning, it doesn't go in. You don't learn as much. And I suppose it's a bit like eating. If you binge eat, all you do is feel bloated and ill, and it's not good for your health. And it's the same with learning. Your brain needs time to take in what it's heard, what it's learned, and process it. And all the research has shown that actually, if we do a bit every day, it's far more successful as a learning experience than binge watching a whole course in a day, as it were. So that would be my first tip. Although what I want to do is go back to something that was said earlier about, because it reminded me of something I heard yesterday from the BFAWU union, where one of their learners, a chap called Kevin, had said that he goes for his exercise every day to keep his body in shape, and he does his online learning to keep his mind in shape. And I thought that was a really, really nice analogy. So, yeah, that's that. Also, I suppose there is one more point that should be mentioned, is that there may be a few people online who are concerned about the safety aspect of it, and that, is my data safe? Who's going to be getting hold of this and all that? And I think those can be genuine concerns, particularly if you're watching this thinking about supporting kids doing online learning, like who else is talking to them on there and that kind of stuff. But I don't really want to talk about it more, although we have a webinar, we have a dedicated webinar on the topic in a couple of weeks' time by the RMT's Ivor Riddle. So if that's something that concerns you, I think that would probably be the place to find out more.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. It's great to see so many resources being shared in the chat panel. We've got links posted to OpenLearn, to Duolingo, to TUC Education's e-notes, which are short bite-sized pieces of learning that are about workplace issues. We've published 3 this week about issues particular to COVID-19. So do take a look at those if you can. So moving on, next question is for Jo. The WEA works with a lot of people who are new to learning and perhaps not so confident in traditional learning environments. Considering the current COVID-19 lockdown, what tips would you give to anyone who is considering doing some learning but isn't sure how to go about it?
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, obviously people are in different places, and for some people it's a massive jump because they don't have access to don't have a laptop or any access at all. So, you know, in that case, it's obviously more difficult. But I think in any case, a crucial starting point is to ask somebody else who can help. So, you know, I spent some time the other evening introducing my mum to Zoom. She's good on some aspect of you know, she can do email but nothing else, and actually was simply spending time talking through the steps. So I think if that's you or if that's someone you know, then actually understand what their starting points are as ever, and just spend some time talking them through the first steps. And then I would say key thing is try something very simple. So start with an e-note, with a short activity. We're running some very short activities at the moment, and I've posted a link just now on a whole range of things. One of the sorts of sessions that we've been trying out is where you can try different things literally for 15 minutes. And those have ranged from learning a few kind of key phrases or words or ideas in a different language to doing a bit of origami online. Why not? So all kinds of things, and literally 15 minutes. And if you're not keen on that, then you know you can you're moved around to something else. So that I think that's crucial. But also there's lots more. So thinking about transferable skills. You know, obviously a lot of people are feeling anxious now about the economic situation, about jobs. So again, there are activities which I'm sure UnionLearn are producing and that we're developing around, you know, transferable skills in this current context. From that to things like history, practical art, singing. There's a whole load of online choirs. If anyone is singing, we can send some links around to those as well, and even drama. So a lot of these activities are free. So again, you haven't got that financial barrier. I think it's an opportunity to try something different. I think, as Matt said, it's an opportunity to put your toe into the water of a subject which you know nothing at all about. And I think in many ways it's much less intimidating than signing up for a formal course where you're going to be in a room with people. But you do still get that get that interaction as well. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Obviously, lots of you on the call are union learning reps, but if you're not, talk to your union, talk to your ULRs. You know, WEA, like many other providers, I'm sure Birkbeck's the same. We provide support to students to get started. So we've got a phone number that you can call and get to help to get advice about those first steps. And that's what our tutors are there to do as well. And just finally, you mentioned online safety, Matt, but the other thing to note, I think, is just about what using Wi-Fi. And if you've got, you know, if you've got Wi-Fi at home, then it's not costing you anything. You don't have to be using data allowances and so on. So it doesn't have to be expensive in terms of hidden costs either. So yeah, small steps.
Thanks, Jo. And I think the key thing to take away from that is that small steps are a great way to get going. Don't dive in head first and sign up to like an online master's that's going to take you 4 years. You can start small and do bite size or a short course. So that was fantastic. Next question is for Sal. So in your experience, what are the most common mistakes that new students make when they return to learning?
So very often people are coming back to university with the expectations that they had from the past. And the world has changed now. So one thing I'll say, just to add to what Joe was going to say, or Joe was saying, is whether you think, I'm going to university, I'm going to have to do this alone. It's independent study. So that's actually true to some extent. We're expecting you to learn how to learn on your own without a teacher. But the thing is, we have a whole raft of dedicated staff who are exclusively there to help you out, to learn how to do it and to support you in other ways from wherever you start. So for example, I'm a learning development tutor. That's my role in the college, is to teach you how to learn. There's a whole number of us at Birkbeck, and we're in every university in the country now. It's a fairly standard thing. The library staff are there to help you research. We're here to help you read and do your essays. And also, as well as that, even for union members, there are dedicated members of staff. So, for example, we have a member of staff called Sophie Swain, and her job is basically to directly support union members into university, help them with their applications, help them find resources to support them, particularly if they're not traditional learners. Because that's it, right? If you already know how to learn, you don't need us. So the whole thing is, if you're not sure how to go about university, that's why we exist. This is why we have jobs. And we love to help you achieve your potential, because we know that you can. And it only takes a little bit of instruction, a little bit of help from us. It's a little bit like, we're the training wheels, and it's an absolute joy for us to see you shoot off into the distance and we never see you again, because you've got the hang of it. It's a little bit of scaffolding rather than us holding your hand from the start to the finish. That's not what you need, and that's not what you expect. That's not what we're for. So that's one thing I'd say. The other thing is, people come to university with unrealistic expectations of what they need to achieve. So students often come to me because they've done their first essays and they're really disappointed and ashamed of their first grades. And I always think, of course you're not good at this yet. And of course you don't understand the subject very much. That's why you've just paid to learn it. Do you see what I mean? Like, let's build from where we are. Of course you're not good at it yet. You've just got here. So allow yourself, a little bit like when you start reading a novel or watching a new TV show, to not know what's happening first of all, and for that to build up over time. So the next is, it is a big jump. The first term of university is a massive jump in terms of your intellectual capabilities and stamina. It's going to be exhausting, but the challenge of it is so rewarding. Just do it one step at a time and get through that first term. The next one is the whole point of my job. There are recipes and methods. So I'm all about letting you know the rules of the game. And once you know the rules of the game, then you can win. But the thing that you didn't know is that there are rules of the game that you can follow, rather than it being about your innate intelligence and whether you have that or not. So another thing about university assignments is people tend to think they're either academic types or not academic types. And I really think that's about whether or not you're middle class or not middle class. You're university type traditionally or not. But university is changing. That's not what the academy is anymore. So what we want you to do is tell us with a quiet confidence, based on your research and your evidence, what you think. We don't want you to sound like a posh person. It's not, what's the point? We've got plenty of posh people at university, and they're getting on just fine, thank you very much. What we want is for you to find your voice and to express that with confidence in the university. And lastly, what I'd say is courage. So if you're trying something new, let's face facts that doing something new is a risk, and any risk means a potential failure. And that can be very painful, particularly if you've got bad experiences at school. So when you try something new like this, even if it's just a 15-minute taster course, that's an act of great courage, and you should recognize that. So it's something that you're growing in more ways than just intellectually as a human being when you do something like this. Yep, so that'll do for me. Who's next?
Thanks, Sal. I've forgotten your job title. Is it learning support tutor? Was that?
No, not support. So support means that there's something wrong with you and we're going to help you because we're very charitable. I'm a learning development tutor. And what that means is, no, it's really important, because It's something, it's not wrong with you because we feel sorry for you. This is not a charity situation. This is development. You already have intelligence, skills, and drive. And what we're here to do is to help you hone them for the particular subject. Do you see what I mean? So there's something wrong with the university. Without us, I think, then the university is lacking because we're asking you to do something without telling you how and then blaming you with a bad grade. Super unfair, and why I'm not support. But yes, learning development tutor.
That's fantastic, and that was a great explanation. Thank you. I was going to say, look out for your learning development tutors at Birkbeck or any other university or college that you may be attending.
Yeah.
All universities, look out for them everywhere.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sal. So, Matt, I've got a question for you now. Could you tell us about some of the learning opportunities that are out there which might be suitable and accessible to learners supported by their trade unions, please?
Yeah, I certainly can. And it's a bit of a difficult one to answer because it's who are you and what do you want to learn? Because there is so much out there. Now, I always knew there was a lot out there. I've been involved in learning for a long time, but actually in the lockdown, I've been looking back and, and rechecking the landscape, and there's far more than I ever thought there was. And if anything, I think the biggest challenge you will find is trying to get the right piece of learning, because there is just so much. It can be a bit overwhelming. Should I try this? Should I try that? Should I try the other? So any of these that I suggest, what I will say is my golden rule is try it out. And if it doesn't suit you, there is no shame in saying, okay, that one isn't for me. Let's put it to one side. Let's try something else, because as Sal said, it's not that you're stupid or anything. It's just that's not the course for you. You're not at that place at the moment. So it could be that the course is way too easy for you. It could be it's way too difficult. It could be the subject isn't what you thought it would be. Or it could be that actually it's not a very good quality platform and they're not offering support, because I think support should be offered and the good ones do offer it. Now, so whatever I'm going to say next, bear that in mind, that even though these may or may not suit me personally, they may suit you or they may not. For me, on a personal level, I really like FutureLearn and Coursera. FutureLearn and Coursera are very, very similar platforms. Coursera's American, FutureLearn's British, and it's actually run by the Open University. And what they do is they offer university-level courses for free, and they're run by different universities around the world. So say, for example, you might want to learn Japanese, and it's a Japanese university teaching you, and there is tutor support of it. So it's a really quality product from that point of view. There's also OpenLearn, which is very similar. That is also, as the name suggests, part of the Open University, but they do all the courses themselves. So it's all Open University courses there. And if you're looking for kind of university level stuff, you're looking to try something different, as we talked about before, dip your toe in the water, they are really good at that level. Languages, I would always say Duolingo is a bit of a first stop for most people. At the moment, I'm doing Spanish on Duolingo, and I've been going at it for a month now, and I've learned well. I find it really suits me. Duolingo is a website that works on the spaced repetition theory, which is basically, as I was saying about before, you do a little bit often rather than binge watch, as it were. So Duolingo, you do a placement test. So if you have a bit of knowledge in a certain subject already, it will put you in the right place, and then you carry on from there, and you do a lesson or two lessons or however many lessons you're comfortable with a day, and it's available on your phone, it's available on your iPad, on your laptop, and it reminds you if you haven't done it. So I think that's a really good one. For more basic skills, I think the Khan Academy is good. They have a lot of very basic courses that are accessible, they're easy to use. National numeracy, although of course that is only numeracy, it's not literacy. And there's an organization called the Good Things Foundation. It's an American charity, and they have a suite of basic courses that are good. Citizen Maths is another numeracy one. That's only at level 2 though. Then there's Pearl, which is run by the Open University. But there are loads and loads others. I mean, we've got Joe here from the WBA. Just go on their site, have a look at what they offer. There's lots of stuff. You know, I've been trying out some of their lectures, for example, which is quite interesting. There's one tonight. And also, you know, what about your unions? I mean, with the TUC, the one thing we should say is that lots of different unions have some really good offers that they've negotiated for their members. So they may have their own online learning platform, or they may have negotiated something with an external organization such as Ranks or Litmus Heroes, somebody like that. So see what your union's offering. And the great thing with the union route is that you have that support there, because what we offer as unions that's different to anybody else is that network of ULRs who are trained and who are passionate, and they're around the country. And even if you're not in the same office or the same factory as them, they're only on the end of the phone or on the end of an email. So, you know, really use your union resources. That's what we're here for. But as I say, you know, just do the course that's right for you. And if you are struggling, and this is my final point, if you are struggling, there is no shame whatsoever in asking for help. You know, you're not thick, you just weren't taught. Is how I always phrase it. And you do get better. I mean, I like the idea about the cake. You know, the first cake's always bad, the second cake's the good one. 20 years ago, I started doing some creative writing, and I wrote a novel. And during this lockdown, I actually reread it, and it is so bad. It was unbelievably awful. If I was a tutor, I'd have looked at that and said, this guy is never, ever going to have a future in writing. But you know what? You improve. And the second one was much, much better. So, yeah, you don't worry about it.
Thank you, Matt. Great to hear about your adventures with creative writing. Before we move on to taking some of the questions that you, the viewers, have been submitting while we've been speaking, it's worth just mentioning how brilliant union learning reps are, because a little bit of discussion in the chat panel here that someone is saying that union learning reps are the backbone, well, reps in general are the backbone of the trade union movement. I think that's absolutely right, and it's a point worth emphasizing. And remember as well that union learning reps do change lives through learning, by bringing learning to the workplace and really making a difference to everyday lives of people in ways that perhaps a few years ago were unimaginable. So yes, thank you to all reps and union learning reps. So we've had some questions submitted by viewers. Let's have a quick look. Okay, a question here. I'm helping a member, so I'm presuming this has been posted by a rep. I'm helping a member who suffers with anxiety with their online studying, but they keep looking at their colleagues' progress through modules and feel silly for not being as quick. What advice would you give to anxious students? So I'm not sure who wants to go first. Sal, perhaps, because you spoke the least recently.
Okay. I kind of want to pass on to Jo about this to make sure that she gets some airtime on this, because I think you're really going to have some useful things to say. But one thing I would say is, what are the conditions in which your colleagues are studying? So at Birkbeck, for example, we have students. So when I was studying, I had a part-time job and I was studying the rest of the time. So I studied all of the time that I had available, but lots of my colleagues were studying alongside working. They were studying alongside having children to take care of. And in the lockdown, we just do not know what the conditions are. And you also, all you can see is that your colleagues have looked over those things. It's a little bit like in an exam, when you see the person next to you scribbling wildly, you've got no idea about the quality of what they're saying. So in a way, we can build the situation up into which, like, they're in the same situation as us and they're getting more done. I'm failing even though I should be doing better. And they are definitely cleverer than me. These are all stories that aren't true. Do you see what I mean? We just don't know. So in a way, that anxiety is something that we learn from being very small children, about the number that we get or the letter that we get attached to our studies is a mark of our value as a human being. And it's just not the case. It's just not the case. So let's go back to the idea. So we're in this very kind of meritocratic society now, where the value of learning is based on the grade rather than the experience of learning, what you got out of it. So it's understandable, but it's really an unfortunate, for me, it's an unfortunate part of this meritocratic system in which how good you do is more important than what progress you're making as a human being. And that's the most important thing. So I just want to pass on to Jo, because I'm sure she's got some helpful things about this.
Thanks, Sal.
Well, I'm going to start by shouting out what Brandy has just said on the chat, which is, like Facebook, don't judge by others, highlights and so on. So, and the second thing I would say is often learning is about quality, not quantity. So it's about what you're looking at. But thirdly, I mean, a lot of what we do is not accredited, but we do lots of English and maths and ESOL, English speakers of other languages especially, which is accredited. But for us, and I think for Birkbeck, I'm sure as well, it's about the individual's journey. It's about understanding where, the colleague that's anxious is starting from. Now, if your colleague is brand new to this, then actually they're not going to be doing the same amount of content necessarily than other people's, but what's the feedback that they're getting from the tutors? Are they getting positive feedback? Are they able to sort of respond to that feedback? Because actually that's the important thing. So it's about that individual's progression. Many programs you don't have to complete in the same time scale. So as Sal says, it's about the circumstances as well. But I would say, ignore the noise, focus on where you are, and take the steps that you can take. And each one of those is progress. So progression, we often talk about progression, suggesting it's like you start here and you go on and up and up. But progression is often in very different directions, into different types of courses, into practical experience and so on. It doesn't have to be a straight line up to higher education and so on beyond. It can be just about continuing to learn.
Thank you, Jo. Matt, did you have anything to add on that question, or should we move on to the next one?
Just one short point. It was the mention of anxiety. And we all feel anxious sometimes, no matter what other people's experiences are. And actually, prior to this webinar, I was feeling a little bit nervous, and so I went on and watched a 2-minute laughter yoga video, which really relaxed me. And there are loads of things like that you can do that can just relax you if you are feeling anxious, because whatever other people do, we all feel a bit anxious sometimes. And actually, I don't have the link, unfortunately, to that video, but the chap that did it, he's doing a laughter yoga webinar for us in a few weeks' time. So perhaps if he's on here, he would have the link. I don't know. But there's a whole series of just 2-minute videos on a little relaxation exercise.
I'm sure we can dig out a link to that if perhaps to promote the webinar in a few weeks. So there's a question actually I can answer now, perhaps before handing over to the others, because it's specifically about TUC training. So it asks, will the TUC be running Zoom classroom courses for reps and members to access over the coming weeks with the lockdown situation? Yes, we are running reps training. We're using online materials supported by either Zoom or Microsoft Teams discussions and virtual classrooms, essentially. You can check out the TUC Education website, which hopefully one of my colleagues will post in the chat in a minute. We've got a section called Courses in Your Area, where you can see what is available. That is specifically for reps training. I understand there might be some mental health ones coming in the near future, but they're not yet posted. So do watch out for those coming up. Okay, another question for our panel. Just 1 second. So where has it gone? It's moved. Okay, so the question is, there are a large number of online learning options, but what is the best way to get some help and support on finding out which of these is most appropriate to what you want and need? In short, what information, advice and guidance is there available around online learning? So absolutely, if the choice is overwhelming, how do you make the right choice for you? Jo, do you want to go first?
So we were both trying to unmute me at the same time there. Sorry about that. So how do you make the choice? It's a really good question. There are different providers, Birkbeck, OU, etc. do have kind of websites, obviously, where you can search by different subjects. So it's often a good idea. For example, the way we do it is that we try to sort our courses, which are very varied, 50 odd subjects. We're moving towards sorting them by the sort of outcomes that you will achieve through that, but also by sort of broader topic area. So I would start by really working those websites and actually using the search engines. The more specific that you are in terms of the search engine, the way what you put into Google or into a Birkbeck site or whatever, the closer you're going to get to what you want. I think obviously make use of your union learning reps. If you've got union learning rep, ULRs often have information about courses in your locality. When we're talking about online, it is a much bigger range of options. So it's tricky. I would say talk to your union learning reps and really focus on how you're using Google and search. And if you know exactly what you want, put that in your search engine. Use inverted commas so that you're just getting the specific level of course that you want, and take it from there. And then I would say do some further checking. What are the requirements, what's needed of you, what are the charges, and all of that, so you can begin to whittle it down. So I think you just have to plan it like a campaign, be very methodical, do some research, and don't expect that you're going to end up on the perfect thing course straight away. Actually, sorry, I think you're muted now. But just one other thing is the National Career Service, also a useful one. National Career Service have a massive range of activities. So again, that's a good tool if it's work related in particular. Try NCS websites. I think the Department for Education also have websites as well. They're enormous, but again, use those search engines.
Thanks, Jo. And yeah, this time you'll all be able to hear me. Sal and Matt, have you got any tips about finding the right online course before we sum up? Sal?
Oh, the right online course. So again, it's partly about the massive choice that we're all faced with in so many departments. But the thing about online learning is, as we pointed out throughout the workshop, is that you can do tasters. So again, to back up what Jo said, use the website, see what's on the syllabus. So let's say you're learning for pleasure, but you find when you look at the syllabus, you're not really interested in any of the reading in the syllabus, or you're not interested in what the modules are, then you can cross it off the list. So like any other big investment of time or energy or money, do your research beforehand. But also, if you possibly can, do tasters. And what I would say in terms of the various courses, and you can regard lots of free online courses as tasters throughout. And what I would say is, if it's vocational, first of all, check with the employment body that you want to work in. So, for example, lots of our students, they want to be therapists, like counsellors, but sometimes they have an accident and they do a psychology course, which does not lead to the qualification that allows you to do that. So is the course that you want to do going to get you where you want to go, if it's vocational? And if it's for pleasure, is it going to meet the pleasurable requirements? And if you're doing it for pure pleasure, then if you're not enjoying it, if pleasure is not forthcoming, then drop it. Do you see what I mean? But one thing I would say is a caveat to both of these in terms of is it helping or is it pleasurable, is give it a good go first. Like, it'll take a little while to get into something, a little bit like a good novel. You see what I mean? Give it a bit of time and allow yourself that confusing struggle at the very beginning, and eventually you'll be able to tell, oh, this is working for me. It's starting to sink in, or I'm really starting to get into this, or you're not. So give it some time. And once you've given it a good trial of a good few weeks at the very least, then you can assess it and decide this is the one or this isn't the one. So if you're going to invest in a university course, for example, do some short courses first. And that will allow you to see, oh, actually, this is not what I thought it would be like. Actually, it's really dry and boring, or it's much more difficult than I thought, or it's got much more mathematics than I thought there would be. And therefore, you know that the course you're planning on investing in, like £9,000 or £27,000, isn't maybe quite for you. So invest that time before jumping in. That's really the only way. So the usual pattern, do your research, give things a try, and then if they're not working, have the courage to change direction. Because sometimes that change of direction is what you need to do to get eventually to where you need to go.
Absolutely, Sal. I think that's great. Don't be afraid to make a mistake in the first instance, really. So, Matt, any tips on that before we sum up?
Well, not many. I was looking in the comments at the side, and there was some discussion of learning styles. And someone said check your learning style out. Somebody else said, well, they've been debunked. Whether that academic debate is probably still going, but we do learn differently. I mean, that's without doubt. And so, for example, for me, some people are planners, some people are checkers. My methodology is I give it a go, and if I don't like it, I get rid of it. And so I don't pay for anything up front, because then you feel like you should do. But I give it a go. I have that taste, and I think, okay, yeah, I might go forward with that, or I might not. So, but that's often about your learning style. We do learn differently. We do try things differently, and be aware of that. But what I will say, and there was a comment there, it said start with what interests you and not with what you think you ought to do. And I think that is so true, because and it goes right back to our school days when we're told to choose our GCSEs and like, well, which are the GCSEs that will get you the job that you want? Do you even know if that job will exist when you enter the world of work, And you don't. And how do you know which job you want when you have no experience of any job? So you don't know anything about half these courses that you've been expected to choose. Do what you enjoy. Do what you enjoy, and the rest will fall into place.
Thanks, Matt. Right, before we go, and within the next couple of hours, we'll start our long bank holiday weekend. Just ask, yes, I feel the same, Sal. Just to ask everyone just to sum up and maybe leave us with some inspiring words to embark on the weekend. So over to you, Jo.
Okay, so just very briefly, I think that what we're all learning now about online learning and what we're all experimenting with means that the future is going to look very different to where we've been so far. And that's a brilliant thing. And I think particularly as we reflect on the way many hundreds of thousands of people are working already in terms of very precarious work and so on, and people having multiple jobs, learning has to adapt and be relevant to those adults along with everybody else. So actually, this is a beginning of a new way of working which reflects realities of people's lives, and that's a real positive. And we'll all be doing a lot more online learning, building a lot more online communities, and bring it on.
Thanks, Jo. Any final words, Sal?
Okay, so just to back up what Matt was saying, I really, really agree. Like, we do things because we think they're going to be helpful for our work, and sometimes we do things that aren't always pleasurable all the time. But if there isn't some degree of pleasure in what you're doing, then you'll fail, because you won't want to do it. You'll have no motivation. So in a way, like, let's not forget, like, learning is about, in a way, trying to cultivate this joyful curiosity in knowing how to do something better, or just knowing something else about the world. So allow yourself to have that pleasure. So and also this thing that Jo was saying about adapting. So the thing that makes the humans distinctive from other creatures is that we can adapt. We can adapt both tools and intellectually to new circumstances. We live everywhere in the globe. because we're able to adapt to anything continually. So in a way, learning how to learn is a way of future-proofing your life. You're always going to be able to cope with the new circumstances if you train yourself to know that you can always learn the new skill you're going to need to learn. This is what everyone's having to do continually. So, and I can tell you from the experience of everybody here, apart from possibly Joe, who's been using Zoom for a long time, we have all had disastrous experiences with Zoom in the last few weeks, as we've allowed ourselves to work out how on earth we run universities without university. We've had a terrible time, and it's been hilarious, and now we can do it. Do you see what I mean? We've adapted to this new circumstance we've found ourselves, which is unprecedented. And actually, it's been quite fun at times. It also has been stressful, but when you allow yourself to learn how to learn, you allow yourself to embark on this grand adventure for the rest of your life. That'll do for me.
Fantastic words, Sal. And Matt, final few words from you.
Okay, my final piece of advice is just dive in and try something new. The other day, I was scanning through the Coursera website, didn't know what I wanted to study, and I saw a course on the Talmud. I'm not Jewish. I didn't even know really what the Talmud was. I thought, sod it, I'll give that a go. And I gave it a go, and it was really interesting. I don't want to study it again. I've had enough of that, but I had a great time doing it. And you can do the same. Just find something and give it a go. See what happens.
And on that note, thank you all for joining us. You've been a brilliant audience. Thank you to Matt, Joe, and Sal for being a fantastic panel. And hope you all have a nice bank holiday weekend, everybody. A different bank holiday weekend from what we are used to, but hopefully the sun will be with us at least for a couple of days. So see you again soon, and bye-bye for now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Anna. Thank you.